Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tools and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively.
Welcome back, everyone. Today I have Rachel Astarte with me. Rachel is a holistic psychotherapist, transformational coach, licensed marriage and family therapist who is the host of the podcast Self-Talk with Rachel Astarte. She also is the author of Celebrating Solitude: How to Discover and Honor Your Highest Self. Welcome, Rachel. I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here.
So today you and I are going to talk about the power of solitude, being lonely versus being alone. And when I first found out about you, I was looking into your book, and you had sent me your book, and I was able to read that. And I was really resonating with quite a bit that you were saying, especially the beginning where you were talking about how you had gone through a breakup, you had lost your father, and then you were kind of finding yourself navigating the world on your own. And so I want to talk about that. You know, what is the difference between being lonely and being alone, and how oftentimes these times of solitude can be very beneficial for us?
Yeah, seriously. It's a great topic to discuss. What I should point out that the difference between aloneness and loneliness. Aloneness is really an intention. It's an intention to spend time with yourself, getting to know yourself, doing the things that give you joy, that kind of thing. Loneliness feels more like an absence, right? Something is missing, whereas aloneness can actually be very fulfilling. Now, that's not to say that in periods of aloneness, we don't get lonely.
Exactly.
But we can certainly negotiate that. But I think that the real difference between the two is intention. And that's an important distinction to make.
I love that. I've never really thought of it that way, because I look back at my life, and I've gone through times of relationship and times of aloneness. And many of my friends would be like, you've been in your aloneness stage for like 7 years now. I'm like, well, I'm really loving my aloneness stage.
Mm-hmm,
but then I'll be in these times of relationships. Now, in your book, you also talked about too, how, you and even some of your clients that you've worked with, how sometimes we lose ourselves within our relationships as well. And it's important for us to have aloneness within relationships. So I want to talk about both sides of the spectrum in this show, because many out there are single, and many out there are in relationships. And I think it's important to have aloneness in both, right? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So let's first talk about, we've established that aloneness is an intention to spend time with yourself. Well, why would we want to do that? Why can't we just hang out with our friends and be ourselves? The real reason is we want to be able to spend time really discovering who we are without the influence of other people around us. So a lot of us, for example, might feel like we don't fit in, or somehow, social media is really good for making us feel less than, so for example, if I'm a mom, which I am, but let's just say I'm a mom, and I'm looking on social media, and I'm seeing all these moms with their gorgeous kids, and they're doing all these crafts, and they're going on these apple picking and this and that. And I'm just like, wow, I haven't done any of that with my kid. I'm the worst mom in the whole world, right? What alone time lets us do is eliminate all of the comparisons, all of the roles. It lets us think, what does it mean to me to be a mother? What does it mean to just Rachel, or, whomever you are? So it allows us to begin to accept and love exactly who we are. So I talk about creating a solitude practice, which could be 2 minutes, 2 hours, whatever you can swing. But all you need to do during that time is do something for yourself that doesn't involve anybody else. So not scrolling on social media, but, it could be knitting. It could be taking a walk in nature. It could be meditating. It could be taking a yoga class for yourself with, just alone. So you're not comparing yourself to anybody else. It could be journaling,
You
any
can
of these
drive.
things.
I love doing that.
Beautiful, beautiful example. Something that allows you to feel full in yourself. Another one is just putting music on and dancing, you know, something for you, right? So to answer your question, aloneness is a process and a practice. So even if we're single, yes, we technically are physically alone, but that doesn't, that's not the intention. The intention is, you know, the intention is missing from just living alone. Anybody can live alone and be miserable, right? As a lot of us have experienced. But when you are intentionally solitary, when you're intentionally taking this time to clear your mind of outside influence and really tap into who you truly are inside and begin to love that person, that's so beneficial, not only to yourself, but everyone else. And that brings in the other part of your question about relationships.
Wow.
How much better we can be in relationship if we're truly being ourselves at any given point. And that means we need to know who that person is and spend some time with that person as though we're our own best friend and we're hanging out with our best friend, only it's really just us, you know? And it really does benefit your relationship because you're not as activated or triggered. You're also not depending on your partner so much for validation.
Absolutely.
And to fulfill some part of you that's missing. This whole idea of my other half, which is just fairy tale nonsense.
Yeah.
You know, it really doesn't mean that
within ourselves. Yeah.
Exactly right. And so when you have two, so in the book, I suggest that even if you have a family with children, everybody can take solitude break and just do your thing. And when you do that, you're so much more grounded and able to be in healthier relationship with other people.
Absolutely. And, you know, one thing that I recognize often with my clients is they love the need for distraction because it's almost like the fear of being alone is really a fear of being with yourself in your own thoughts and being kind of terrified of what may come up. But really, those are the moments when we need to go within because those are things that we need to heal. If we're pushing away different aspects of, you know, things that have happened in our life, you know, whether it be trauma or abandonment or rejection, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And we don't want to sit with that, then all we're doing is we're just moving from one to the next to the next. And it's like constant feeding off of that constant distraction and not really healing. And so I think for me, those moments of solitude, it's kind of reflection times, you know, for me. And I read something the other day is we don't learn from life through experience. We learn from reflecting on experiences. And I really like that because I do feel like in those moments of solitude, when you don't have the distraction of everyone or everything around you, you actually are kind of forced to sit there in your own energy and ask yourself, what is this my energy? You know,
right.
Do I resonate with this energy?
Yeah. And for a lot of people that can be really daunting because like, I don't need to spend time thinking about like how my parents made me sit at the dinner table till I finished my dinner and I missed all my favorite shows. I don't need like all that trauma. I don't want to do that. But the truth is, there's so much learning that's possible from sitting with parts of yourself that you may not love right now and learning to love those parts. No aspect of ourself is bad or wrong. So any experiences that were traumatic growing up, and I don't recommend that you try to heal that trauma alone. If you do have capital T or small t trauma, it really does help to get some therapy or coaching around that so you're not alone. But if you're in that kind of healing process, you're working with someone to work through some of that trauma, being alone is a great way for you to learn to love those parts of yourself that you've hidden away. Because we're not designed to be broken. There's no aspect of ourselves that is anything to fear. There's only, I always say there's gold where there's fear. That's when you go into the fear or you go into the things that make you uncomfortable, it really helps you to expand. And then imagine you don't have those fears anymore. They're not holding you back anymore. And once you move past that, I'm afraid of what thoughts will come up if I spend time alone. Once you move past that, you'll find that there's so much joy and regeneration. I refer to it in the book as charging your soul's batteries.
Yes.
You're charging your batteries so that you can give back to the world. And that's the important part. I'm not an advocate for being a recluse or locking yourself away.
Or hermit, yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to do that. That's not what we're designed to do either. But when you are able to find out who you truly are, then you're giving that gift to the rest of the world in every interaction you have, whether it's the clerk at the grocery store or your partner or your kid or your parents or whatever.
Yeah, it's like a healthy balance between solitude and connection, right? It's
it has
learning how to balance that out. And I know, Rachel, when I go into those, those hermit modes, they don't last forever, but they last for a certain amount of time. And I'm like, here I am going in my hermit shell for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And, I kind of tell those around me that this is what I'm doing and this is where I'm going to be. Don't worry about me. I'm okay. I'll come out of it. I'm just going in for some self-reflection. But I do notice that in those moments of solitude, I find that my intuition is more enhanced. I can pick up on my own thoughts versus the thoughts of others. I feel more creative in those spaces, more motivated at times. I can understand myself on a deeper level. And I find that I can support myself. I don't have to necessarily rely on those around me to do that. I can find that self-support. And I've had to do that from time to time. It's like, okay, I'm getting really attached to things in my outside world. It's time for me to go within and really see if I can do this on my own. And in those moments, I find growth and expansion, within myself. And I'm like, whoa, like I would have had no idea that I could do this. And so, when you're working with people and people are saying, I'm lonely, what are some things that you suggest for people who might be feeling, lonely, even whether they're in the alone stage or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So loneliness is a longing for connection with others. Now, if you've already spent a decent amount of time in your healing aloneness, loneliness can actually be a sign that you've charged your batteries. It's time to go back out into the world.
Ooh, that's so perspective. Mm-hmm.
So you could say, oh, all right, so I'm good here. And if I'm missing someone, then that's, again, we listen to all of our feelings and we let them guide us intuitively. So if we're feeling called to reconnect with other people, and there's a difference, right? There's a difference between a loneliness that feels like I have to stay, as you were talking about, distracting yourself. If you're distracting yourself from yourself, that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about when you have spent some quality alone time and you get lonely, then yeah, it's time for you to rejoin the world a little bit. Now, if you are feeling lonely and you haven't spent a decent amount of time, then I would suggest really spending some time with the loneliness, sitting in it. What are you missing? What's not going on for you? What is it that you're, write it out, write a list of what are the things that don't feel right to you right now. And you can find, if you create a list like this, you can say, well, I want someone to make jokes with, or I want someone to talk about the TV show that I was just watching, or I want someone to, interact with me somehow. You can actually go down this list and find out, how can I offer this to myself?
Oh.
So for example, I want someone to make jokes with, make some jokes with yourself.
Make yourself laugh. I crack myself up all the time. I'm like the funniest person to myself.
Exactly. And that's how it, and so I'm a huge proponent of talking to yourself out loud, and being able to have a conversation with yourself the way you would a best friend, because it's really, really helpful. You begin to understand that, for example, I don't know if you've experienced this. I certainly have, in relationships where you're telling a story and the other person is like, get on with it. Like, can you get to the point? You don't have to do that when you talk, when you're alone. You can take as long as you want to tell a story and you will be listened to. So, and that's another one. I want to be listened to.
My cat listens really well.
Yeah, exactly. I have 3 cats just for that purpose. And
I'm never alone.
Well, we never are, and so But the point is, when we really take a look critically at what is it that's missing from my life, what I feel is missing, and find out how much of that can I offer myself before I go outside of my life for that kind of connection. Then when you do go out and talk to people, you're not so desperately needy of other people's energy.
Like siphoning their energy, like, oh, I need to be around you all the time. And
right.
Yeah, I get that, because I get in those moments of solitude, and then I seem to attract people who are wanting to be in my energy all the time. And it's like, I have to set these boundaries. Like, no, I'm in this space right now. And I do recognize that that's been a pattern, and I'm working on that, because it's like, oh, what is the deal? It's like, when I want to connect, they don't want to connect. But the moment I go into solitude, it's like everybody wants to connect.
Right. Because think about it. You have actually recharged your energy, your light, and that's very attractive. That's like, oh, wow, there's a groundedness to you that is literally attracting people.
Absolutely. And so, Rachel, you being a licensed marriage and family therapist, I want to ask you this question, because I do recognize this with a lot of my friends, my clients, that, for those of them that have been in a long-term relationship, and then they go through a divorce or a breakup or some sort of a separation, I recognize a lot of them jumping right into another relationship. And me, this was an area that I was always the opposite. I was always, I'd go through a breakup or a divorce, and I would immediately just separate and go through this time of solitude. And sometimes it would last a couple years. It could last up to 8 years. It really just depended on what I was going through. But, what is is that healthy? What is that? Because I see that commonly happen. And I guess I've been just taking a different route, in that. And people will look at me like, I'm kind of crazy in those areas, but I do recognize that a lot. So do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, and what you just described is what we're talking about here. What's right for you is what's right for you. So I always say, just bring awareness to what you do. So if you've just gotten out of a long-term relationship and your first desire is to get right back in, get back on the horse, as they say, then take a moment and figure out why. What is it that's making you have to get right back out there? Because, as we were just speaking about, it may be some of those things that you're longing for, you can find within yourself. And I can say, as a therapist, we also want to be looking out for these areas, because we don't want to get into the same kind of relationship we just got out of.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's really good to take some reflection time, even just a bit, to say, where did that not work? What was my part in this relationship? What can I think about or shift or alter, or what can I enhance that I didn't show in this relationship, So taking some reflection time is really, really important. And I've experienced this too with my patients. You end up in the same cycle, the same, like, I don't know, I thought I did all this work on myself, but I keep getting involved with cheaters or liars or whatever. What's that about? And the first thing we do is we stop and we go inward. What is it about that? What is it about your belief system about yourself that's causing you to not attract somebody who will love and appreciate you for who you are?
Wow, that's powerful right there. And, because it's funny, because I'm kind of on the flip side. I get so comfortable in my solitude. I get so comfortable with being whole within myself that oftentimes I always say it's going to take a really amazing person to step into my life. I mean, it's going to take someone who is really, at my frequency, and who really can provide value and enrich my life, because I'm so happy, with being in this state of solitude. And I have such a rich friend base, and I have I make connections, like, on this podcast, I make connections with my clients, and I just feel very fulfilled in that. And so, and people will say that to me, you're like an anomaly. Like, that's not, not everybody's like that. But I think, like you said, we all have to find our way, and we have to figure out what works best for each and every one of us, and what may, appear to someone in a relationship looks a lot different to someone who's not in a relationship. And,
Right.
yeah, this has been such a rich conversation. And I want you to talk a little bit about your book, Rachel, and, what it's about and where people can find it.
Yeah, sure. So the book is Celebrating Solitude. And what I actually do is, and you beautifully kind of summed it up at the beginning, but I talk about what solitude is, what I mean by solitude, why it's important. And then I actually walk you through the steps of how to create a solitude practice for yourself and give you many different options of what might work for you and how to do it if you're single, how to do it if you're in a relationship, how to do it if you're in a family. And also, and this is the important part, after the solitude, how to reemerge into the world with all these gifts that you're offering, so
that's
one
the
of
part
the
I need to read, I guess, right?
Yeah. So, well, it's not so much about reemerging as a wildly social person. I'm very much like you. When
I'm an
we all went
introverted extrovert. That's what I call
exactly.
myself.
That's what I call myself too. If I have to put a label on it, I'm the life of the party, but then I go home and I can't see anybody for a week.
Yes.
It's like, please don't call me. I don't. So
that's too much.
Yes. So, but that,
awesome.
but the whole message behind this work is to celebrate your solitude, not, so if other people are saying, wow, you're weird, you're an anomaly or whatever, it's like, yeah, I am. And so can you be.
And I love it.
You want to be. Yeah. And the whole point is the acceptance of who we are. And if we're wildly extroverted, beautiful, then that's who you are. That's the light you shine in the world. I still think a little bit of solitude a day is good for people, but what, to each his own. But the point is that the giving back doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go out and now be social. What it means is when you interact with people, you're coming from a grounded place. Like I said, that could be the smallest interaction, talking to your mail person, your mail carrier, or whatever.
Present with them. Yeah,
exactly. Which you wouldn't do if you were scattered and trying to think about it. Okay. So for example, we had this beautiful opportunity during the pandemic when we were all in lockdown. And there was this wonderful opportunity to go inward, which many of us did. We're seeing massive changes in the workforce.
Totally.
So many more people deciding, I don't want to commute to work anymore. I want to be at home. I get more time with my family. I was just listening to this story on public radio this morning about, wow, I get to go to my garden. I get to brush my kids' hair in the morning before they go, to school. So we have these opportunities to do so much more when we have time to ourselves to figure out what we want. So the book is about that, and it walks you through the whole thing, but most importantly about how important it is to reemerge from your solitude.
I love that. And I love how you break it down for, people who aren't in relationships and to people who are, because I think that's really important, because there's been times in my life where I have been in long-term relationships and times when I've been in long-term relationships with myself. And,
Right.
So I love that. And so, Rachel, if people want to reach out to you, how can they get in contact with you?
Sure. Well, the book is available on Amazon. It's also available on my website, which is rachelastaretherapy.com. Pretty easy. And that's how anyone can reach me if they want to continue this work. I do, this is rare for a therapist, but I do offer single sessions. So for example, if you just want to sit with me for 50 minutes and say, hey, I'm working on this thing, I'm not sure, I'm having a block, like I just want to talk it through, we can do that. So, and if you want to continue on a longer basis, you can. So there are a lot of options, but rachelastaretherapy.com is the best place to reach me.
Great. That's awesome. Well, thank you, Rachel, for spending time with us today, sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom and answering, not only the listeners' questions, but mine today too. And so I really appreciate the energy that you're bringing out into the world. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
You deserve to navigate your life as an empath in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT Tapping and the Emotion Code, Visit my website at www.thesoulcafe.org.